All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. First of all, Amelia, let's start with you, kind of your name and your company and what you do, and then we'll get to Kate next.
Alrighty, my name is Amelia Pillow. I am the owner and brewmaster at Shippingport Brewing Company
In Portland.
in Portland neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah.
And so owner and head brewer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Kate, how about you?
I am the co-owner and one of the brewers at Hopkinsville Brewing Company in Hopkinsville.
And I wanted to ask you all what led you into this industry. We're going to talk about women in the industry and how many of them, there are in the state of Kentucky, but a little bit of background, if you don't mind, Amelia, what led you to the industry of brewing?
I learned how to homebrew in college, basically from the standpoint of just wanting to drink good beer, but not having to pay as much for it. And once I graduated from college, I thought that I was going to try to pursue a career in, the field of my study. But it turns out that the art world and the publishing world are very difficult to get into without a graduate degree. And moreover, the people that operate in those kinds of worlds were not exactly my kind of people. Not exactly the kind of people that I felt like I could ever be myself around. And also I learned that I was very bad at sitting at a desk all day. So kind of trying to figure out how to parlay this, that's not the word I'm looking for, how to translate, my desire to do something that had like an aspect of creativity in it. And also wasn't just sitting at a desk all day. I thought about how I enjoyed brewing, and brewing is both creative and physical. And at the time, I thought a little bit more objective than art, which, as I think most people in the industry can say, that beer is often just as subjective as art is. But I moved out to Portland, Oregon in 2007 to just basically glad hand to every brewery in town because they had more per capita than any other city in the country, and eventually landed at a brewery called Hopworks Urban Brewery.
But you're a Louisville native, correct?
Yes.
And then ended up coming back home. So we'll talk about Shippingport because that's new on the scene. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Kate, tell me a little bit about you, Hopkinsville, correct?
Yes. So I arrived in Hopkinsville. I am so not from here. The Army brought me here to Fort Campbell in 2004, and it ended up being, I really liked it. So it ended up when my kids were born, it was a good place to raise kids. I was married at the time, and I didn't even drink beer when we started this project.
Really?
Yeah. I knew nothing about beer. I knew that my husband at the time, was something he truly wanted to do, and I was a very supportive wife. So we started the build out, and midway through, he got orders somewhere else. And so, he said that I had the option of either locking the doors and walking away until he came back and could finish it, or I could keep going with it. And at that point, we had poured our life savings into it. So I said, well, this thing either has to make money or we have to sell it, because there's a lot for us, a lot of money in it. So I'll keep going with it. So a friend came in and taught me how to brew. And the first few batches, not that great. And when my now ex and I split, I got the kids and the brewery, and
So he's no longer in the beer business, but you are.
Yeah. That is a very short version of a very long story. No, and then I totally see where Amelia is coming from in terms of the creativity. It is a very creative job to be able to design beers that people will drink. So that was something I loved, and because it became obvious that this was going to be my career, I ended up going to school and getting a graduate certificate in brewing science and operations, and so that's pretty much how things have been going.
But for somebody who really wasn't even a beer drinker, and then now here you are, that's quite the journey that you've been on. Now, you mentioned the brew science, so there are degrees in that. So it includes science and different things like that maybe the lame person doesn't know. So what else? So did both of you all both study that? some point?
I went through the American Brewers Guild and got my they have a correspondence program. So there were 3 of us at Hopworks that all wanted to go through the program, 2 of whom had already been promoted from the restaurant down to the brewery, and me, who was at that point, I think I was the bookkeeper, assistant general manager. And I just I'd kept on taking on more and more responsibility to try to prove how badly I wanted to be in the brewery. But unfortunately, I was kind of getting pigeonholed in administrative jobs, because oftentimes that's what people think of when they think of women in the brewing industry, is that you have to be a salesperson or an administrator. So that's what was happening to me. But it did give me the opportunity to get my go through that program. If you work in a brewery, then you get put to the front of the wait list, so you automatically can get in, and they also give you entrance to the program for a discounted price. So I did that, and that was like a 5-month course, something like that.
Okay.
And got my certification in kind of all of the more technical side of brewing education that way. Where did you go to for your schooling, Kate?
Auburn. Auburn has a graduate certificate in brewing science and operations. And they
And
just
people might not know that, but I mean, there are degrees, there are schools that
well, and they just turned it into a full master's program. So I'm hoping that if I can find the time next year, finish my
Gee, what are
master's.
you doing with that spare time, Kate?
Right now, most of it's spent at the baseball field watching my kid play.
But we're going to get into the juggling that everybody has to do and all of these things. One thing I was curious about, how prevalent are women in the industry? I was even just wondering, in the state of Kentucky, do we have numbers on that?
Kate, do you know better than me, probably through Pink Boots, maybe?
I know the last actual number I saw was the Brewers Association. I want to say it was 7% of breweries have a female owner, not just sole ownership, but a female owner. I don't even know about female brewers. I know we're not nearly as prevalent as, the white men with beards. And I say that with love because that's what my partner is. But yeah, there are not many of us. And, Amelia, I asked Derek 3 months ago, hey, how many of us are there? And his response was something like, oh, well, I can think of 4 of you off the top of my head. I'm like, wait, you don't have a number? That's not something you count. So not to throw Derek under the bus. That's not what I mean to do at all. It's just that I thought it was interesting that just now people are thinking to even ask the question.
Yeah.
So very few, and then probably I would find not just with gender and women, but diversity in general in the industry.
Yeah, we were talking before you got on, Kate, about whether there are any owners of color in the industry.
Joey and I had that conversation when coming back from Craft Bash. I don't think so.
I mean, I guess to be honest, I don't know why this didn't occur to me, but Sam Cruz his father was Puerto Rican, but he is not, it's not a huge part of his identity. But however, he is a Hispanic owner. I suppose that definitely counts. And I worked for him for 6 years, so it's embarrassing that I didn't think.
So I guess that leads me to the question, did you all have role models, or were you the first?
Amelia was my role model.
I
remember standing over the boil kettle one day, emailing Amelia, and I was so scared because Derek is like, oh, you should email Amelia. I'm like, yeah, but Amelia's really cool. And what if she thinks I'm a dork? And
I hope that wasn't the impression that you got from my response.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was very intimidating.
But when there are a few, so Amelia, did you have any, or were you the first? I mean,
I'm trying to think. There was not anybody who was in kind of a higher position in Portland when I was coming up in that brewing community. There were other female brewers, but they were mainly of my age group. The only one that was kind of more of a trendsetter for me was Tanya Cornett, who I don't think she's still at 10 Barrel. I can't remember where she is right now, but she was one of the original brewers at Ben Brewing Company. She was just a very lauded, won all of the medals all the time, brewer out in Bend. And she was the kind of I guess, biggest role model that I had to look up to in the Oregon brewing community. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else in Portland proper, but like I said, I knew other women of my like age and kind of like position, you know, but I
Right.
didn't have a lot of women to look up to in that industry. And I
Well,
think that a lot of us, like, you know, once you get in the industry, people like Kim Jordan, who was not a brewer, but an owner, was definitely a kind of icon in the industry to look up
in
to.
the industry. So Kate, tell me a little bit about Pink Boot Society, because that really is kind of an advocacy group, correct?
Yes, and it, I was listening to Amelia, and she was talking about how she knew other women in the industry in Portland. I didn't know anyone. Granted, there aren't. I'm still the only brewery within an hour in any direction right now. So just being hooked into Amelia was really cool. But then finding out about the Pink Boot Society was just like, oh, there are other women in this industry that I can communicate with. So that was their goal is to advocate and represent anyone who identifies as female within the fermentation industry. It used to be just beer, and I believe they've opened it up to the entire alcohol industry. And whether you're a brewer or a salesperson or a distributor, or you work at one of the malt houses, you're allowed to join. And so it's neat to talk with other people. You know how hard it is to find gloves that fit small hands? I mean, random stuff like that where you're just like, oh, good. Like someone else has had this problem. And
These
I realize
struggles.
gloves are a very small part of it. But yeah, and especially with all the new, if you've been following the social media with all of the rat magnet and things that have been happening within our industry, Pink Boots has tried to respond in as much as a large organization can respond, give blanket statements like that.
To be protective and to kind of be a watchdog of the industry. I was Leah, who also is a head brewer at Apocalypse. I read something with her that said, gosh, I can't wait till the day where it isn't a thing that a female is a head brewer or the owner. Do you all feel that way as well?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I feel like that was part of my initial, so when I was a much younger person, I definitely had like kind of like an initial like knee jerk about Pink Boots, just because I wanted to be a brewer. I wanted to be a brewer first and not have it be like, oh, you're a female brewer, and have that mean that it was some kind of special designation that set me aside and didn't just give me the credit for being just a good brewer, and a lot of that also is just because I kind of, I'm a 6'3", 220-pound queer woman who does not exactly exist in the same spaces as a lot of women in the industry, because I just don't have the kind of stereotypes projected upon me about like my physicality and just a lot of the things that go along with it. And to be perfectly frank, like in a lot of my younger days, like female spaces were not the most comfortable spaces for me, because I'm not like I don't fit in the kind of mold of what a lot of people call femininity. So that was part of the reason that I was always interested in beer, because beer was much more a space that felt like inviting to me, being like a kind of larger physical presence. And, there's a lot of drinking and body language, and that always just felt more home to me. So and as I got older, I mean, I really do feel like I had to unlearn a lot of behavior that I thought was going to help me in the beer industry, just because I realized that there was a certain level of, no matter how well I embodied the kind of dude mentality and presence, they still weren't going to let me succeed in the same way. And the concept of holding space with other people who were going to experience the same kind of challenges as me became more and more appealing. But also in the concept of like trying to open that up to more than just women is really appealing to me. But yes, the concept of like having it be like, oh, look at us, we're so special for succeeding as women in this industry. It's just like, or we could just be really good brewers, like that would be a nice day to experience, where it's just like, not like, oh, look what you did as a woman, that's so exceptional. It's like, or look what I did as a human who makes really excellent beer, that I also look forward to that as well.
I love
agree.
that.
I would love the beer to just speak for itself.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I want people to focus on the beer, not the fact that I have ovaries.
Well, then
I
you might not like this question that I'm going to ask because it, referring to that. But one thing that I really did like with after you won the Sam Adams Brewing the American Dream, because after they talked to you, they started a program for working moms. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, were you struck by that? I mean, you talked about having 2 kids. I've read articles where you say you'll put up a sign, I'm at the ball field. I'm having to shut down for a little bit because you're mom first. So how did that come about? And did it mean a lot that Sam Adams recognized that?
It did. You never think about, and this isn't just about being a mom. It's about, you really never think about what you do if it's something that you do every day. And if it's something that's just normal to you, whether it's I make beer every day, I'm a brewer, you don't really think that that's special in any way. Or, hey, I'm a working mom, I've got to leave, like today I was late because my daughter is on day 2 of band camp. So I had to run home and get her and then run her to camp and then come back here, because we're also brewing today. But you never think about that stuff because you do it every day. That's your normal life. So I was struck that when they called to tell me that we won this award, that they're like, oh, and you're a working mom. And obviously you're doing all this other stuff in addition to running a business. Here, you have made us think about working moms. We want to do something to help working moms. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really neat that I was in tears by the end of it because it was just neat that it helps other people that are in the same situation I am.
Well, there was a recognition of
Yeah.
of everything that you're doing, which I really appreciated.
That made me so happy.
I wanted to have you all plug your places. So Amelia, tell us a little bit about Shippingport here in Louisville and Portland. That's where you live and you wanted to bring it to the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, so I moved back to Louisville at the end of 2013. And basically I have, I made friends with and had some friends who were all living and working in this neighborhood already. There are a lot of folks who are basically like investing in property because this is where we can afford to live. And also, since there are a lot, like it is a relatively downtrodden neighborhood, there are a lot of like more industrial spaces and bigger spaces that artists are occupying for studios and such. So just spending time with folks in the first couple of years that I was here and also, living on a brewer salary, I decided that I wanted to buy a house here and also just wanted to build a business that was going to be inclusive of the people who are already here and not like built towards satisfying customers that were going to come once the neighborhood came up. Because I think that, when we talk about neighborhoods like Portland that have a lot of potential, a lot of the people who want to invest and like start building things here are actually building their business to serve the community that's there. It's to serve the community that they hope will be there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a real problem in cities. And so I very much wanted to build a space that was like, hopefully a meeting ground between the two communities so that people can like, find value in one another and also like not just overrun people who are already in the spaces that do need help and do need development, but they don't need to be edged out. You know what I mean?
I love that. I love that. And then the name is a shout out to the history of the area, correct?
Exactly. Like I wanted it to be something that folks in the neighborhood could kind of like feel invested and proud of. Portland Proud is like the kind of statement of our neighborhood, like there is a lot to be proud of about here and there's a lot of history, but obviously naming it Portland Brewing Company would not be possible. So and anything kind of like referential to Portland, there's already Portland, Oregon and Portland, Maine, and it's already confusing enough to a lot of people having moved from Portland to Portland.
Right.
That I didn't want to make that distinction. But yeah, Shippingport Island is where the locks connecting the Ohio River. Up until recently, it was a place that I used to love. Like it was like kind of like the little park that I used to love to go to, walking with my dog, and you can just see the falls of the Ohio, and it's really nice out there. And I felt like it was a nice kind of point of pride and like tying the business to the neighborhood. I named the tap room the Sally Forth tap room,
I love
just
that.
because I wanted it to feel like a bar that's like, you know, like a bar that your grandpa could have hung out.
No, I love that, and all the tributes to the area. I really like that. And Kate, tell us about your place.
So we originally purchased a building in downtown Hopkinsville because we could afford it. It was either this was a proof of concept. Like, we were the first brewery in the county's history, so we didn't even know if this would be financially viable. So yeah, bought a building that was literally falling down, and because it was cheap, and and we were able to rehab it and make it a small space that was inviting enough, because kind of like how Amelia was saying that she wanted a space that she and her neighbors would feel comfortable in. Now, that was how I felt about this building. I wanted it to be a place that I could bring small children, because at that point my kids were considerably younger. Because you don't want to take your kids to a dingy bar, obviously. So here's this place where it's bright and open and airy, and it's a place that families can come. It's a place that single women can come and feel comfortable. And that's kind of what I had in the back of my mind as we were designing the space. So we were here for 2 years when it became obvious that we needed a lot more room. We didn't have nearly enough indoor space, so we bought the body shop next door and spent another year renovating that, and then opened it 3 weeks before COVID hit.
Oh,
So it's just been an interesting journey trying to make downtown Hopkinsville a place that people want to walk and spend time in. And that's kind of been my goal the whole time, has been, all right, what can we do to help this downtown area that was falling by the wayside, due to suburban sprawl and whatnot. And it's been neat to watch the downtown come back to life around us. I'm not saying that we're solely responsible for that, but just seeing other people say, oh, well, if a brewery can survive down here, I'm going to try a restaurant, or I'm going to try a deli, or I'm going to try a clothing store. So that's been really neat to watch over the past 5 years or so.
Part of that revitalization. 2 quick questions, and I'll let you all go. If there's somebody getting ready to start on this journey, be it a female or someone of diversity, what advice would you give them?
The nice thing about the industry, although, internally within each brewery, I feel like it's hard, but the industry overall is very much a place that shares resources and information and all of those things. And so even though you might not see yourself like represented very well within it, it is very much built upon a community of like sharing resources, and the concept that like the rising tide raises all ships. If you open up a brewery somewhere, that gets somebody into craft beer, and once you're into craft beer, usually craft beer drinkers will travel like all over the place to go try new things. So you starting something will help me, and it's in all of our interests to help one another. So even if you might not see yourself directly represented in the industry, people are so willing to share information and advice and all of those things. And to get in touch with our guild, because our guild director is really good. He's the one who put Kate and I in touch with one another when she was starting out. And there's just like, there is a really strong sense of community. And then, we are working hard to try to build more and more space for everybody who might not see themselves as well represented.
How about you, Kate?
Huh? I like how Amelia phrased that last part. And don't take no for an answer. Because this is not an easy industry to get into. And I'm sure Amelia can speak to that, having just opened her own place, it's hard. It's a lot of work. And a lot of times you get really frustrated, whether it's, trying to apply for a license or trying to trademark a name, or, just be persistent and keep working at it. And I would say that to anyone, not just, women or people of color, right, or, that goes to anyone. Just be persistent and keep a good attitude, have a sense of humor.
And final question. I mean, the industry appears to just be, hot as can be right now. What do you think about the future of the industry?
So having been in it as long as I have been, the thing that I'm kind of seeing is that I think that you're just going to see a lot more breweries like Kate and I have at the moment. And I don't know whether she has any intentions towards like building a production facility, but it seems like that kind of model of like doing the brew pub and then doing a bigger facility and then starting to package is kind of dwindling down a little bit just because the competition has gotten so stiff now. If you want to actually get your beer sold at any volume at a grocery store or, you know, a bottle shop or a gas station or anything, there's, you know, 10 at least other brands of craft beer from your state that you have to compete with, let
Wow.
alone like, you know, all of the big national brands. So I think, and I'm hoping that this is the case, is that there are going to be a lot more small places that just open up and service neighborhoods. And like, that's definitely the trend that I saw in Portland in the years I was leaving. And when I left, like when I moved there, there were 23 breweries within 5 miles of city center. And by the time I left, there were over 50. And
Wow.
there's even more now. And people just kept on saying, like, there's no way that, you know, the local market can support these things. And the reality is, like I was saying, like, the more you turn on local craft beer drinkers in your community, the more they support other people. And then you just end up like having people who like you're their local and then they like go out on the weekend to go try other people's beer, you know? So I think that we'll just end up seeing more and more like really hyper localized little corner pubs. And I'm excited for that. That sounds like a great time to be.
And I
I
think that's
agree.
what let's face it, that's what the world needs right now, are more places where people get together off of social media and can converse and share ideas and not just blast it out into the void. I think that we as small breweries, small local breweries, do a lot for that, encouraging people of different backgrounds to come together. And I know I've seen it here. We've got a group of regulars now that they're people that never would have crossed paths in real life, but
Mm.
they did here, and now they're really good friends. And that's a neat thing to watch from behind the counter. And I think it can only be good, right?
Yeah.
Well, and of course, the hokiest line that's coming into my head is a place where everybody knows your name, but that's kind of
Yeah.
that's
We
kind
want
of
to
what
retain
you're.
every small
I'm not
brewery
going to sing
survivor.
the song, but it does kind of sound like what you're saying. They bring people together. It's a place of comfort, and it's face to face, and it's conversations, and all of those things.
Yeah. And I don't remember who wrote about this, but the concept of the third space, which
Yep.
is, you know, you have your home and then you have your work and then it's healthy for human beings to have a third space to come together and socialize that is like those other two spaces, just as comfortable, same groups of people, but also have the like Kate was saying, the potential to interact with different kinds of people and kind of expand your mindset. Because if you don't have that third space of being basically both comfortable and also have the position of like meeting up and exchanging ideas, then you're too insular and it's like you're not leading a very satisfying life, you know? And I think that a lot of people have been using, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, you know, these social media spaces as a third space. But the reality is it's very hard to empathize with somebody who is just spouting words at you that you don't have to see their face and their visceral reaction when you're saying these things. And you can just, you know, demonize and make that person the other. Whereas if you have a conversation in person with somebody at a bar, you can see the way that your words affect them. You can hear the tone that they're using and like, you know, basically get a better idea of what it is they're trying to say. And you're much less willing to like hurt someone's feelings if you see the reaction actually written on their face. And I think that that is a very important thing. And also just like being able to learn
Just,
things
yeah,
from other people.
human connection. We all need
Yeah,
it, right?
for sure.
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And kudos. I have such a healthy respect for what you all do. And I know groundbreaking wasn't what, you know, you all set out to do, but it has been in many, many ways. So thank you all very much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Best wishes.
Bye.
Thank you.